Morning, everyone. I'll let somebody handle the technology. I was at a CIO forum yesterday, and we'd got our UK managing director there, and he had to dive off to meet the Prime Minister yesterday morning, and we had our global CIO there, and everybody's doing a bit of presentation. And it came to the CIO speaking. And the only person that couldn't make the technology work was our CIO. The slides wouldn't work, the clicker wouldn't work, and you can imagine in front of a gathering of influential CIOs from across the public sector, that was, well, he took it very smoothly and very relaxed. So let somebody else do that today. What I'm going to talk about this morning is a brief introduction to cloud in general, and then I'm going to talk about what Microsoft is doing in particular around cloud for public sector in the UK and how we're approaching cloud in the UK. And I hope what you're going to see is actually cloud is a bit broader than you might think it is. And you're going to hear later on today specific areas about cloud and application development and particularly Azure. But I'm going to open the box a little bit wider than that in the first session this morning. See whether this works. So I'm Mark Ferrar. I'm National Technology Officer for Microsoft UK. I joined Microsoft last October. I spent 6 years working for the National Health Service. 3 of those years I also chaired UK Government CTO Council. So I'm kind of not a dyed-in-the-wool Microsoft guy all through. I've been other places doing other things as well. So part of this perspective is me coming new to Microsoft. And my job at Microsoft is slightly different from many of the people you'll meet in Microsoft. My job is to form relationships with people across public sector and talk to them about 2 to 5 years out, what we might call a strategic horizon. I had an interesting discussion with Bill McCluggage, who's UK Government Deputy CIO, because government often and public sector organisations often think so 20 years is a strategic time horizon. But around IT, you kind of think, 5 years is actually quite a long time. A lot of things change in 5 years. So my job is to have a 2 to 5 year view of what public sector needs, communicate that back to business groups who make our products and services, and then carry their messages on sort of long-term thinking back through to the customer base as well. So it's quite a slightly different role. And I'm going to get this wrong, aren't I? Let's try clicking with the other one. So who knows what cloud is? Yeah, we all do. I mean, it's kind of a trick question, really. But actually, cloud's got a lot of different aspects to it. And when you look for definitions of cloud, then the usual suspects like Gartner and the analysts and everybody comes up with their own definition of what it is. And when we try to do is we come up with a statement like this, and you boil it down into something that's almost kind of inert, but it actually captures everything cloud is. Because the more cloud gets complicated by different aspects and different services, then the more we kind of push the boundaries of any particular definition. So you end up either with a 20-page document explaining what cloud is, or you end up with a statement which is fairly short. And cloud is just, and this is kind of not talking down cloud because it's a very important point in IT's history, but you have to see it in context of a transformational era when we went from mainframes to PCs to client server to web services, and hey presto, here at the end of this is this cloud thing, and there will be something that follows it. But for now, it's where most of the activities are moving into this what we call cloud arena, and there are some good reasons for that. US National Institute of Standards and Technology use these 5 essential characteristics to define cloud. And sometimes when you think about some of the cloud services people offer, they may not actually reach these. And it becomes a very interesting discussion when you're talking about the difference between what I'll explain to be private cloud versus public cloud, whether some of these things are actually all met in all those cases. So Microsoft's vision, and apologies for the PowerPoints, some of the PowerPoints come from our marketing department, so they are fabulous in their transitions and ability to impress with moving images. And if all the presentation works, it's actually my team's success, because they pull these slides together and I just slice them and dice them. If it fails miserably, it's my fault because I've done the slicing and dicing. But Microsoft's vision of cloud is, it captures briefly on this. We talk about 3 screens and the cloud, but there's a really important component to Microsoft's view of the world in here, and that's the on-premise world. And the on-premise world has not gone away. The on-premise world will remain very, very important. You're starting to see this emerging from the analysts who, 2 years ago or a year ago, were going cloud, 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 everything's in the cloud. And suddenly we're starting to see things come back to what we've been saying for quite a long time is actually, and you kind of expect us to say this, but that's kind of where we're starting off, but actually on-premise is still actually quite important. So at one side you've got whatever format of device you might choose, and then you consume services from cloud, but you will also expect to consume services from on-premise. And why is this important now? For public sector in particular, these things ring really quite true. There are new economics. The landscape has changed. Cloud offers a dramatic way of getting the same services or getting growth services at vastly reduced cost, shifting from capital investment to operating cost investment, from reduced management overhead, and there's a community of people that are struggling to run large services or platforms in small pieces all over the place. When actually that's a lot of this is just infrastructure, and it should be just commoditized, standardized, and run ruthlessly efficiently. And so things like patching and maintenance and things like that sometimes are a burden. The cloud takes that away for you. And then redefining productivity. We know that there's across public sector in particular, there's a challenge where many people are on back-level versions of our software and other people's software, and making those, you come back to the patching and maintenance or the upgrade, there's always kind of a bill at the end of it, and we kind of don't see that that's necessary. You move into cloud, then you should just get the latest stuff that comes along. How many people have got a Hotmail account or a Gmail account, something like that? Do you ever notice it gets upgraded? Do they ever get a picture which says, you can't get to your email because we're upgrading the system, please wait till next week? It just never happens, does it? Those features just suddenly appear. And that's kind of what the power of the cloud service remaining evergreen. So in public sector, we think that these 5 things are really important. Enabling efficiency, engaging with citizens, because of the scalability that cloud services offer enables you to engage with citizens when the citizens demand the load and not when you've delivered the services to figure out how to cope with a peak load, creating opportunities and new opportunities for outreach in services, reducing costs and actually driving a degree of contributing to environmental sustainability. So cloud computing for us delivers IT as a service, freeing up organizations to focus on their business processes and not on running commodity services in IT. And we talk about cloud in 3 sort of contexts. The previous government had an ICT strategy, which included a component on cloud. I don't know how many people saw that. It kind of disappeared off into the archives. It had a bit of a program called G-Cloud, and it did actually quite a good job of articulating the different aspects of cloud. That was gathered from outside, and we talked about in G-Cloud, because I worked on that program, we talked about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service as different aspects. And I'm just going to run through components of those. What you tend to find is that when you manage all those stack, if you break your IT services down into a kind of stack like that, starting with the data center and your networks and computers and virtualization, and you build all that up until you've got an application at the top which delivers you some business benefit, because actually all the stuff below middleware you're really not interested in if you're running a business. What you're interested in is, does the app actually transact business for me and generate value, however you choose to measure value. And you can choose to manage all those on-premise, but as you start to move into outsourced or managed services, then further up the stack, the vendor starts to take care of all the sort of nitty-gritty of technology that you might want to, might previously have been running. So you get infrastructure as a service kind of goes up there to the virtualization layer, and a little bit into operating systems. And then as you go into platform as a service, you get more features built in, you take for granted, and again, it's managed for you. you can start just focusing on your application layer rather than thinking about the operating systems. And then when you get to software as a service, actually we're delivering the applications as well, and all you do is have the screen and you start doing useful work on those products. If all this is a bit basic, just somebody shout and say, speed up, and we'll get through it. The cloud, those three aspects of cloud: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, kind of map into Microsoft products pretty much like this, with Windows Azure platform forming essentially the first two layers of cloud, and then Microsoft Online Services and customer partner apps forming that software as a service layer. And I'm going to talk about those very briefly. Microsoft's been doing this a very long time. We talk about cloud services. Almost everybody says the last 2 years it's a new thing, the new buzzword still, cloud services being there. But when actually we've been running these things for a very long time, everybody recognizes Hotmail and Messenger and Windows Live ID, which used to be Windows Passport, and these things have been around 10 years, 15 years or more. Some of the newer stuff, Xbox Live, 30 million subscribers, these are all cloud services. If you just think about what's actually being consumed there, what's being delivered, gamers don't worry about their Xbox game being shared and upgraded in the background. They just get on and use that game. And then new things like Healthfort, where we're starting to allow citizens to share and store their health information. So we've been doing this at scale for a number of years. And when we start to move into from the consumer space into commercial space, then we get to the cloud services we've got along the top of that diagram. But we also have equivalent services, and this is a really key point that we kind of want to try and get across, is the on-premise world for Microsoft is exactly the same as the cloud world for Microsoft. You get the same sort of, the user gets the same sort of rich experience, and the applications work in the same way. The application development works in the same way. So if you develop your applications to run in cloud, you've developed your application to run on-premise as well, or vice versa. And that's really, really important point. So what you expect to see in each of these silos is pretty much the same effect and the same rich experience. Office 365 is what we'll, from the middle of this year, start calling our application software as a service experience, and it pretty much is the things you expect: Exchange, Link, which is what we call, what we now call Communicator for instant messaging, and Office web apps, so delivering Microsoft Office. So anybody that's, if you're still using Office 2003, you won't kind of recognize some of the changes that we made in Office 2007 and are enhanced in Office 2010. But when you see those changes, you realize what that's enabled us to do in terms of delivering Office, Word, PowerPoint, Excel in the cloud. It's enabled us to deliver that through the same sort of functionality through a browser. And that becomes really compelling when if you want people to be using the same application, whether they're using it through a browser or on a laptop or on a desktop somewhere in your organization. And then platform as a service, and we're going to hear a lot more, so I'm not going to go through a lot of detail on Azure because you're going to hear a lot about Azure later today. But Azure's two major components, the compute component and the SQL Azure at the moment, and there's other components that I'll come across in a slide in a second. So Office 365 in a